Awesome. All right. Good morning, everybody. Sorry for a little bit of a tech snafu. I'm really happy to see you all here. I think, and I'm excited that you're going to be learning so much today about Azure OpenAI. And I'm hoping that in this session, at least I can give you a very quick overview and talk a little bit about the higher level picture of what's Azure OpenAI, what's the interesting partnership that we have with OpenAI from Microsoft. Talk a little bit about the impact and what experience we're seeing with customers who are using Azure OpenAI. So that's what I'm going to talk a little bit, and hopefully I can do a quick demo. But I know you have lots more like demos and hands-on sessions planned for the day as well. Taking a step back, hi, I'm Tulsi Menon. I lead the product team in India for AI services as well as responsible AI, especially for Bing. That's what my current role is, and I've been in this space for quite a while. I'll start very quickly with just, everybody's been talking about OpenAI and generative AI and all of that stuff, right? And suddenly AI is very much more in the forefront than it used to be in the past. And so I always like to talk with this context of why is it such an important disruptive moment in AI? AI has been happening, and the field of AI has been buzzing for a while since the 50s, right? And there is a very big change in the evolution of what's happened. So in the 50s, people were more focused on, it was a very researchy field, very focused on trying to have intelligent machines that can recreate human intelligence. And so it was very specialized, expert type of systems, interesting spaces. And then there's a lot of interest in like creating, chess and like gaming sort of replications, right? In the late 90s, the whole machine learning phase came in, and hopefully I didn't lose you guys.
No, it's all fine.
Okay, yeah. And the machine learning phase came in, and that's when we started saying, okay, look, instead of having AI that is coded to be this super general, super specific subject expert, let's give it data and let it make little micro decisions on its own. And so the whole machine learning phase started with just very simple models, but based on data, being able to make its own decisions rather than being hyper like programmed to do some very specific task. And obviously around that time, the 2000s, when data and data was being stored at scales never seen before, started that journey. Machines were becoming more powerful, and so deep learning just became a very, very intricate way of taking machine learning and trying to create much larger models that emulated the human brain. So neural network, the whole phase of neural networks, and then like really building complicated models with like millions and then slowly billions of parameters was that whole phase in the late like 2017, 2018, that period. And around then is when I've been like super involved in AI as well. So that was a very big shift. The whole deep learning phase was a big shift then. And that's when we started seeing real practical applications of a lot of serious like AI models. So all of that was great, but then the phase we're in now is like this next big step function, right? It's this huge jump. Everything else has also been like there's been big like steps. Like machine learning was a big step, and deep learning was a big step. But generative AI is, I think, this very big foundational leap, where we're getting to this stage where the models are bigger than ever. But more importantly, we're not just using them to help make decisions. It's no longer about classifiers or making a decision or doing very specific tasks. It's now we're actually using these models to generate and actually create new content, not just like help us refine or choose some existing things that we've done. That's one big change, and why this is such a moment of disruption. The second big reason is also because until now we've had models for very specific things. Right? We had a model to translate this language to this language, one model to create to classify text for a bot within financial services or something. Right? We had very and for sometimes for specific language, and each of these models were very tuned to that task for that language, and for a particular mode like vision, for only image or only speech or only text. Within the deep learning, later stages of deep learning itself, we started getting multitask, multi-language, like universal language models. But with generative AI, we're now getting multimodal models, right? So single model can understand text, image, now with voice, all of that together. And it can take in one form of input, spit out another form of input, and it starts becoming much more generalized and foundational. So that is the reason why I think, just taking one step back, of why we are at this disruptive point, and also we're just at the start of this disruptive point. It's going to be exponentially like growing from here, but this is that leap that's happened, and it means that the way we are using and leveraging and even thinking about AI models is going to be drastically different in the next few months itself. So I just wanted to take a second to acknowledge that. And then talking about OpenAI and Microsoft, especially our partnership, we have a very close partnership with OpenAI and Microsoft, and because we are essentially trying to meet the same goals. And the way that that partnership is manifesting is through Azure OpenAI, and actually a few other things as well, right? OpenAI models are being used in Microsoft products, and I'll talk about that in a second. But Azure OpenAI essentially takes the goodness of OpenAI state-of-the-art models, makes that ready for enterprise consumption, and for, in a way that is bound to enterprise consumption in the whole world of Azure itself, for all of our Azure customers and all of our Azure community. And the specific families of models that we're making available through that is, all of the text-related models with GPT 3.5 and 4. There's a whole family of models. Chat GPT, which is a whole family of models for conversation. So it's the same base text models, but refined and specialized for conversation. Codex family of models for code generation, and DALI models for image generation. And so when I say all of that, just quick examples from terminology point of view, all of you might be familiar with this, but a prompt is the input you give to a model, right? So for anything that's just a completion-based text model, you say give a prompt like write a tagline for an ice cream shop. The response, which is the completion coming from a 3.5 or a 3 or 3.5 or a 4 model, would be just we serve up smiles with every scoop. A chat GPT, the way we interact with that model is slightly different. So the prompt would be some form of like text and context for the bot for the conversation, and then the user input and the user output. Right? So the user input would be, I'm having trouble getting my Xbox to turn on. The model gives a response in the form of a conversational response, and then the next prompt, again, you would give the question from a user point of view, and then that entire conversation is shared as context to the model. So that's a slight difference between a completion, which is very stateless, and it can be very generalized, to the chat GPT model, which is specifically meant for conversation and can operates really well with this contextual conversation system. The codex models are where you give a prompt to either generate code or understand code. So I could ask to create a SQL query for some customers, in Texas for this particular thing, and it would create a query. And there's like 10 different languages supported, and you can actually, even with few short examples, generalize this really well for any sort of code creation or code co-pilot kind of scenario. And then DALI, which is about image creation. Again, lots of this you must have seen and tried out. All of you must have tried out yourself, but you can create really specific prompts, like, create a ball of fire, like for a logo for a particular company, and it will generate that. Okay? So those are the just high level classes of the models themselves. And like I said, these are being now served for enterprise customers through Azure OpenAI. And how that fits into our entire Azure AI ecosystem is it becomes part of our customizable model. So just a recap, I'm sure most of you know about the Azure AI ecosystem, but we have different layers of, where you can keep peeling the onion from like, super packaged solutions to going all the way down to having our ML platform, which is Azure Machine Learning, where you can actually like deploy models yourself, either your own models, sometimes even open source models, or even the OpenAI models, deploy them actually at scale, train them, test them, do all of the ML operations on the ML platform of Azure Machine Learning. Then we have the customizable AI models, which is where Azure OpenAI service also fits in. So these are what we call the cognitive services. So these AI services around vision, speech, language, and so on. And then we have now OpenAI service as well as one of these AI services. So these are where we have models that are base models that exist and you can customize on top of it. Then we have scenario-based applied AI services, which take these base models and bring them into like slightly more packaged scenarios, like search, video indexing, and form recognition, and so on. And then on top of that, we have application builders like Power Virtual Agents for anybody building a bot. And then applications itself, where Microsoft's applications are using them, and then you can, enterprises can directly use that through Microsoft 365. So that's the AI stack and where each piece fits in and where Azure OpenAI service fits in that stack. So taking a step back from this, right, I'll just say that, so you get the sense of where we are with Azure OpenAI. Again, I'll talk a little bit about Microsoft itself and how we have been leaning into this whole trend. Right? We see the new era of AI being all about the co-pilot, where we want to improve productivity and augment human ingenuity with AI-powered co-pilots. And that could be, a co-pilot for whatever your task is, that whatever that X is. And here, X could just be for writing, for coding, for the web, for meetings, for sales, for work, for whatever, right? And that's, I think, the core of how we can really use the power of these models to become like this human co-pilot for whatever task you want to do. And that's what we're seeing a lot of customers use it for as well. And the best examples of that are stuff that we've already built into Microsoft. So for example, we have, the M365 Copilot that can help you, it's been planned, but it can help you pull together drafts based on documents, based on notes, create a first draft. So again, Copilot, because we think of using generative AI to create a first draft of anything, save us a ton of time. Right? So that's one example of using your Copilot for writing, right, as part of Word, Microsoft Word itself. In Teams, which we're on right now, how can you again collaborate better? So thinking of this as a Copilot for your meetings, being able to get notes, summarize them, respond, follow up, take actions, all of that, right? Using OpenAI models. Copilot for your data, right? Again, sitting in Excel, you can ask for either insights. With your Copilot, you can ask for insights on top of your data. You can analyze it, get trends. And these are all great use cases for these sort of models. That's what I wanted to just demonstrate. And then I'm hoping most of you may have already been using Bing. I also work on the Bing side, so both pieces of it. But with the new Bing chat, behind the scenes, what's actually happening is you're actually using a very specialized, customized model of like GPT-4, which is specifically tuned for search and to be very relevant, using search index results, all of that. And that's what the new Bing chat is all about, right? And so it's also a great example of your co-pilot for the web. So for example, if I wanted to, before I took this session, if I wanted to understand a little bit more and I understand, okay, look, tell me more about this. The Dear Azure community in India gives me a bunch of information along with citations. If I want to understand more about this event, the Azure OpenAI Day, tells me a little bit based on the Eventbrite like information. Assuming I wanted to come to Mumbai, I couldn't travel. But if I was thinking about attending in person, the workshop, it gives me a ton of information on if I wanted to travel to Mumbai, what should I do? What should I consider seeing? And then I even ask for like cheap tickets from Hyderabad, which is where I'm currently placed. Right? So it's a great way to think about this as being a co-pilot for you for the web. And essentially it shows you citations. It gives you it saves all of your time, but also gives you references so that and you can go and follow up and continue on your own and not just like trust this as this black box bot. And that's the power of these scenarios. Another example of a web copilot is again what's already deployed on Edge as part of the Edge browser. You can chat obviously as you're browsing, but also a very cool feature is this compose feature, where, for example, if post this session. I want to post like do a LinkedIn post on my this session that I did just today, and I want to just do that very quickly. I don't want to think about and write it myself. I can do that, have my tone be enthusiastic, but that's typically my tone, let's say on LinkedIn, and it gives me a nice draft, right? That I can now quickly take and paste into LinkedIn. But it also gives me interesting suggestions because I said like use hashtags, it gave me hashtags, but it also gives me a suggestion. So for example, if I like to use emojis, if I click on use emojis, it gives me options with emojis. So these are really powerful, ways to really just use these day to day, and we've been embracing that with Microsoft, and we see a ton of engagement, usage, and value to our users because of this. Right, we're able to see customers unleash their creativity, productivity, and uplevel their skills as a result of these co-pilots. And this is just a little image I've created also with Bing Image Creator, which is also again live and public for everybody. And the quote that I found interesting was just, the fact that this is going to take away all of the shallow work, the way the co-pilot, because I hear lots of questions every time I do these talks is that, is this going to take away our work? Is it going to take away jobs? Yeah, sure, it's going to take away a lot of the what we call the shallow work or the grunt work so that we can do the deep work that really everybody wants to do, everybody craves doing. And that's what we should be leveraging these co-pilots for and building things around that, right? So. And like I said, these are the learnings that we've had, which is the stuff that we've been building through Microsoft with our partnership with OpenAI. But also as part of Azure OpenAI, we're seeing tremendous customer momentum with different industries, different use cases. And I put a few on here that are publicly acknowledged, and like we have public stories with these customers. We also have a lot of really, really powerful stories within India as well, using Azure OpenAI. Some of these are just in the works of being public stories, so I can't talk about them yet. But there's some really powerful examples of stuff that you've probably used that are using Azure OpenAI with Indian companies as well. So, and we're seeing like a ton of interest around this. So. And I'll start with, like I said, because we're seeing a lot of these customers doing this, I'll just say that when we see customers, using these, we see them using it for lots and lots of different capabilities, right? Summarization, insights, creative iteration, code generation, and basically limitless possibilities. That said, I think it's just useful that we've compiled a few examples of the top use cases that we see customers leverage Azure OpenAI for today. Again, this is evolving. Right? So it's usually for, let's say, content generation. So anything related to call center analytics, very, very powerful scenario, very, very popular scenario, right? Summarization, again, as part of call center analytics or as part of any just internal and employee document summarization for easier search and retrieval. Code generation is a popular use case similar to the GitHub Copilot case, but specific to an organization or an enterprise. And then semantic search is hugely powerful, and I want to bring that up, right? Like being able to do searches on top of existing data or existing use cases is very powerful. So, so those are a few top use cases, and I'm running a little bit out of time, but I want to get to a demo, and hopefully that should work. Let me share my full screen. I'll just show one example because I don't know if everybody's seen that, but we very recently announced as part of Azure OpenAI as a public preview, being able to build a chat GPT type of model or using GPT-4 on top of your own data. And we have seen that this is the most popular use case that people typically have. Right? Let me just share my screen. Please do confirm if you can see my screen because I reshared it.
It's loading. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. And we recently announced it again, June 19th. We announced this as a public preview. And so hopefully you can see it, talk about it. But I'll show you the outcome first, right? Because when we talk to people about, chat GPT and everything, they're like, this is great. I love this, but I want this to be grounded in my data, in my enterprise's data, in my actual data. It's kind of like how Bing does it, right? And we saw that we try to learn from the fact that the Bing example of using the web's data and using those as citations, giving summarized examples. So we used that mental model and said, okay, look, assuming I have a set of documents on insurance, on a health plan, right? Can I ask, tell me about Northwind Health Plan? Like if I ask this generally to the generalized model, what would happen is obviously it might give me something that I don't control, right? It won't give me stuff that's related to my documents. It won't give me, references and resources. So ideally, this is the kind of experience we've seen people want. And in fact, I can click on any of these citations or supporting content, and it will show me, okay, more details from exactly where it came from. So this becomes a way to create a more grounded conversation. So for example, I can keep going, right? Saying, does it cover my annual? I just put this in because, doing it in real time sometimes demos are always fun, but yeah, I can say, does it cover my annual eye exam? Again, it gives me the right section in that PDF. What about emergency services and so on, right? And you can see behind the scenes what's happening, and I'll show you the thought process, right? Essentially, this is the prompt that goes behind the scenes to create something like this. It says, okay, this assistant helps company employees with their healthcare plan. Answer only with the facts listed in the list of sources. And if there's not enough information, say you don't know. Does that make sense? And so the fact that, we've said here is and that's what the simple thing is behind the scenes, right? Tells you that use the information, use the source. If you don't know, say you don't know, and then show the sources as different citations. So this is how that first, use case was built with this supporting content. And we saw a lot of value that people were gaining out of it, right? So, and I'll show you maybe another set of examples. So I can continue asking, what about emergency services? What about my eye care and so on, right? So this is the outcome that I have. I'm just going to say, yeah. And, I can keep going. Do I need approval if I'm traveling? And it tells me more. And so that sounds complicated. And, I can still have conversations outside of, and it's not that it will tell me it's not that it only has to have citation. Like I can have so I can say something like, it sounds complicated. It says it can be confusing, but we're here to help you, right? Even though there's no citation for this, and that's okay. So this is the kind of thing that we wanted. This, I think, like 6 months ago, 4-5 months ago, we realized that people want to build stuff like this, and we had different building blocks to make that happen. But now, actually, as part of the Azure OpenAI Studio, and I know you'll have some sessions coming up with deep dives, but I just wanted to give you a little sneak peek of the fact that in the Azure OpenAI Studio, you now have a section called Add Your Data. It's the public preview. You can actually, I went and I connected it to my cognitive search index. And once I do that, same thing. This is just the studio, right? So it shows you a way to be able to quickly get stuff like, I'm saying, okay, what's an air compressor, or how, because I have documents in that index around some, fabricated air compressor scenarios. So I can actually say, okay, how do I check the quality of some air compressor? It gives me the references. So this is actually the Azure OpenAI Studio. This is my actual Azure OpenAI resource. And I can, find any of these the citations. It lets me look at it. This is coming from my cognitive search, and I can edit and keep chatting. Right. So this is pretty powerful, and I wanted to just show this small use case. Obviously, this is just the studio. I can see the code behind the scenes of what it's calling. It's actually like, what is it doing here? It's making this particular call, what's the temperature, what's the frequency, and so on. So behind the scenes, what's happening is it's actually picking sources from my search index, using that as part of the context and getting a response. So I just wanted to give that as a sneak peek. Once you all go through the hands-on demo, you will, hopefully see more, play around with this more, but this is a very new feature. And also you can see there's a recent blog that the team has created around this on 19th, and there's a nice video and everything talking through, using your own data with Azure OpenAI. that said, I know we're a little bit over time, so I'm going to try and just conclude. Give me a sec. Right. So I showed you the fact that you can actually consume, how you can actually customize your OpenAI service, and this is very important. Doing the right thing in the way you customize your OpenAI service is critical, right? So we have generalized the OpenAI service, the Azure OpenAI service. We have 3.5 models. We have GPT-4. We have ChatGPT. Then you can actually put in your data, like I just showed you, right? Import your own data, your knowledge bases, your structured sources, and then your own prompts, like explaining, what sort of instructions you're giving to the model itself. That's the ideal way you customize. Of course, you can also fine tune the model, but generally we notice that between your prompts and your data, that's where the magic lies, right? The way you customize it will tell you how good of a scenario you get. And so, for example, we showed in the past, the first example I showed of write a tagline for your ice cream shop. Now imagine that I have so much more context and I differentiate by saying, hey, look, you're a agent whose name is Dana. You do all of this. Give your branding of that particular. This is for a simple example, but give the branding. Talk about the tone of your response. Talk about safety, everything else, right? So you want to make sure that your prompt has all of this. What we call the meta prompt. And then you can give whatever prompts you're giving is now customized to your scenario, your brand, your use case, your tone, and your safety. So I will pause. And then I just want to add Microsoft responsible AI principles are critical. We actually bake in our responsible AI principles and content filtering into Azure OpenAI, and it's a huge differentiator in the way we get enterprises to consume these generative AI models. And responsible AI is extremely important, extremely critical. So I want to just re-emphasize that. All right, with that, I will pause. I'll stop at the takeaways slide so that, hopefully there's questions you can tell me, but I'll pause with just my few takeaways from just the last year or so in this interesting space. And out of everything, I would just say, number one, do not think incrementally. We are at a disruption point. Really think big and embrace these foundational models. And number four, prompt engineering really is critical. It's the new ML operations. It's, we have, in fact, a new preview called Prompt Flow as part of Azure Machine Learning, which can help you with the whole life cycle of prompt engineering. So spend the time, invest in thinking about prompt engineering as a process and as part of ML ops. And safety and responsibility are critical. So with that, I will stop. I think there's a bunch of learning guides I can share offline as well. But you can take this maybe after your hands-on sessions today. So thank you. I hope you all have happy learning, have lots of fun, and upskill and have fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.